what do you think that you'd like to maybe go, oh, I'd rather not have to do this in my position, and then we'll look at.
Okay, the question was if you could eliminate something that you have responsibility for, but then add something that you don't have responsibility for, what would that be? I would tell you that I've eliminated everything. I really have. I've delegated everything, and we have 9 people on the executive staff, and you got to give them all autonomy, you know. And then the one thing you just have to do is you got to make sure you stay informed and you know what's going on, because things can slide, and if you think they're sliding the wrong way, then you gotta start asking questions. And I think when someone like myself or any CEO of a business starts asking questions, generally the person on the other side is thinking, I'm not sure he's bought into this, right? And so that's the kind of creative dialogue that I try to implement at the office. I do a lot of walking around, a lot of interaction with everybody by phone. I go down to the stadium, not enough. I need to get down there more. We got a lot of workers down there, and you know, it's where we present our games and where we do a lot of other ancillary stuff. But in terms of adding anything, I'm involved quite a bit on the league level on some committees. I'd love to do some other work with some of the other committees, but that gets allocated out by the commissioner, who, you know, I think he feels like he's given me enough, and I need to just stay in my lane, as he likes to tell me every now and then when I talk to him, which is fine. But the league work is fun. You know, it's big picture global stuff. If I could do more of that, that would be great. It's exciting. It's invigorating. The league is on fire. It's doing really, really well. The popularity of the game is incredible. There's some challenges, you know, health and safety, the concern about head injuries and getting kids to play the game. But I got to tell you, Roger Goodell doesn't get enough. I'm going to give him a plug here. He doesn't get enough credit for all the things that he's implemented to try and make the game safer and better for players. Much of which the players, not much of which, but you know, a certain amount of which the players don't like, because they you know, he's trying to protect them from themselves. And rule changes fans don't like, players don't like. Some of the medical protocols, guys don't want to take. Mark, I bet in your day you never wanted to come out of a game no matter what happened to your head, right? Well, now you have no choice. And we got spotters up in the stands, and we got doctors downstairs. And occasionally there's a miss. No one's perfect. But for the most part, you see it. You watch a guy come off the field with a couple of doctors and you think it's a head injury, you watch him walk right into the locker room. And the odds are he's not coming back out. The improvements in technology when it comes to and equipment to try and evaluate people. I mean, there's stuff that's going on that's very forward thinking. The league now has a chief medical advisor who's kind of shepherding and overseeing all of this. So, you know, I think it's a big challenge, but I give Roger credit for attacking it. And so those kinds of things, you know, there's challenges in the right, but the league there's so much content. What did Philadelphia have? Like 100 and I don't know what the number was. It was north of 100,000 people at the draft, out in the open area. It was like, you know, 40 degrees. It's just, and so their calendar is incredible now. They have a thing called the Combine right after the Super Bowl ends, and they broadcast that. And everybody talks about these players and how they look in their underwear when they're taking their height and weight, and then they watch them run a 40-yard dash and jump as high as they can, and it's all on TV, and they're all talking about it. And it's become an event of its own. And then you move into free agency, and after that you move into the draft, and then we have our OTAs, which we're finishing up now, a mini camp. There's a little break coming up. You'll be, those of you that need a break from reading about the Broncos, it's coming up here in the middle of June and until the end of July, when we start up training camp. The players are set free, except for the rookies. Vance is keeping the rookies here. First coach I've ever seen do this for 2 extra weeks. So there's a lull, a calm before the storm, and I'm hoping it is calm, because this is a time of year where there's a lot of fun things to do, and you can get outside late at night. And so we cross our fingers that everybody comes back to training camp safe, and you know, the coach reminds players how to behave, and it's fun. So, But that'd be the one thing. That was a long-winded answer, I'm sorry. But try and do a little bit more on the league level. Yeah, Wayne.
One of the things, Joe, I'd love you to take these people into the background of what happened after the Seattle Super Bowl. John Elway said, we need to get tougher. I might bring in some questionable guys, but we need to get tougher. And just a few years later, you win a Super Bowl with defense, not offense.
Yeah.
Same quarterback, Peyton Manning, but different.
Same quarterback, but a different level of skill than he'd had the previous 3 years. Wayne was asking the transition from the Super Bowl team that played against Seattle, lost badly in that game, to the one that won 2 years later. And he did bring in, he shored up the defense and got Aqib Talib and DeMarcus Ware to come in. A couple of guys emerged also. I'd have to think back on the starting lineup, but Brandon Marshall came on as a player, had a real good year. Danny Trevathan, one of his draft picks, came into his own. Malik Jackson, I hated to lose him. He was a tough, hard-nosed player now, that guy, and he came into his own. So the defense really kind of rallied. T.J. Ward was another one, and then Darian Stewart completed the 2 safeties from free agency. So John did you look at that. Plus Emmanuel Sanders came in after that. Remember, we lost Eric Deckard to the Jets, and Emmanuel came in. So those free agency acquisitions were really good. Several draft picks good, filled in. I thought Gary did a magnificent job of coaching. John pulled the trigger. He made a decision after a 12-4 year in 2014. He just didn't think we were, John Fox did a remarkable job. Remember how many, I remember it like it was yesterday, 2010. It was pretty ugly, and we had a real lack of trust in our team, our organization. We were 4-12. We had gotten caught, for lack of a better word, cheating. We'd filmed a practice over in London, and the fans were disenfranchised. A lot of you probably were too. It's just like, what's going on over there? John came in, hired John Fox. John Fox did a great job of kind of changing the culture, getting people excited. Won a lot of games, 4 straight division titles. But John said, I'm just not sure we're going to get over the hump here. Made a change, and Gary comes in with a good staff, really good staff. Wade Phillips did an excellent job, and we end up winning the Super Bowl that year. So, he pushed a lot of the right buttons, I think. And Peyton retired, and that changed the dynamics of you lose a guy like that. John said this when Peyton retired. You're losing more than a quarterback, right? You're losing an industry leader, a locker room leader, an amazing presence in your building. So it's a different dynamic today, but we're hopeful. The team's well stocked, and bad taste in their mouth from their Super Bowl hangover. I know that. They didn't like the way last year went, certainly not the way it ended. So hopefully we can turn it around and, as I like to say, get back to that tournament. Sir, right here.
Is there a free agent that the Broncos lost that you're sorry that you lost, whether you're outbid or you like the other team better? There's a reason for somebody taking another off.
I don't think so. I didn't get into specific details about that. I know we lost a player. This is just me personally. Losing Malik Jackson was tough. I thought he was a really good player, but no, it's part of the game, And you have a salary cap, and you have to put a value on every player. And John's very good about that, so that he doesn't he knows he's got to put together a whole roster, accommodate offense, accommodate defense. So sometimes you can't. A lot of teams will just say, "Listen, just give them the dough, figure it out." And then what happens is you get stuck. And if you look at the track record on a lot of those high-end free agents, the hit or miss ratio, there's a lot of miss. There's a lot more miss. So I don't know that that's the case. This year we didn't have any flashy names necessarily, but we got guys that are going to contribute and make us better. There's 4 of them, 2 on the defensive line and 2 on the offensive line. So, sometimes we had some big names back in 2014, Ware, Talib, T.J. Ward, Sanders. We were in a good position to go get them too. So let's go here. Politics.
What value do you see professional sports teams, especially the Broncos, bring to taxpayers? And did you really go to the Metallica concert?
Well, my sons went. I drove down. took a peek, said, "Boys, stay out of trouble and don't go on social media." And I was not successful. But what a scene. I showed up at the right before they had to stop it. I don't know if you were you there? No. They had a lightning delay, which is good for concessions. Gets you a little concerned on what they're actually consuming. But no, I did not stay, for the record. I did not stay. I did what we call a touch and go. So, and then what benefit, the question was, what benefit to taxpayers do you think a team has? Well, I think this team is important to the town. You know, I really do. I think it's part of our culture, and I'm not saying that just because it's just always been that way, whether I was there or not there. And I think, you know, there's a lot that goes on and around with our team. I think the city has grown up. I said this in a video, I don't know if anybody was at the Larry Mizell dinner, about John Elway. You know, the city kind of grew up as John Elway grew up. And this city's come a long way. I remember what it was like in 1983. And the Denver Broncos, when John Elway was playing, he was one of kind of he was one of those cornerstone players that elevated the level of the National Football League and the interest in the National Football League. There was Joe Montana, there was Dan Marino, these star quarterbacks. And we had one right in Denver, who, by the way, plays a majority of his games on Sunday. This is important to note. On Sunday at 2 o'clock. And why is that important? That's because the most valuable television slot is 4 p.m. Eastern. That's when most people, you're done with your Sunday chores. You might look at the game that's on at 11 here. You might not. Or if you're back east, you might watch if you live in New York, you might watch the Giants. You might not. But when you're done on Sunday and you want to relax and wind down from the weekend at 4 o'clock Eastern, that's when the people turn on their TV sets. That's the biggest audience, outside of the night games, obviously. So that time slot, we were on all the time, to the whole country. You look at the map, and they'd show, you know, Oakland versus Denver, Los Angeles Raiders versus Denver. And, you know, maybe the Rams, who were then in Los Angeles, were playing the 49ers, and that was on CBS. But they only had, you know, sort of 1/8 of the color of the TV map. And the Broncos and the Raiders had the rest. And that's enormous benefit to the city and to the region, I think. You're showing bumpers of the city. You're coming in and out. They're talking about Denver. They're watching the crowd. And you know, it's just name recognition and everything. So I think there's this intangible benefit that the team does bring. And we've had tremendous success, so we've been on television a lot in front of national audiences. Not just at these Sunday and 2 games now, but a lot of night games. And we open our season at 8 o'clock. You know, and the whole nation will see us all alone on Monday night against the Los Angeles Chargers, which I didn't say San Diego, did I? Tony.
As a CEO, what's your biggest fear and biggest goal with the next CBA?
What's the biggest fear and biggest goal for the next CBA, collective bargaining agreement, which is the deal we have with the players, a labor agreement? My biggest fear is that it doesn't get extended, and my biggest goal would be that we all agree that it do get extended. And here's what you hear. I get into it with some of our media members occasionally, not very aggressively, friendly talk. They say, well, this is a heck of a deal for the owners. Let me tell you something. The percentage of the players' money pot went down. It's probably not the right word to use in Colorado, is it? The percentage of money that the players earn went down in terms of percent. In terms of actual aggregate dollars, it went way up. And you know, by 2021, we're going to have a payroll to players. We have 53 guys on the roster, and the total payroll will be between $240 and $250 million, okay? So you do the math. Now, there's a few extras. Divide it by 60, 240. $4 million a guy per year. It's a little different, right, Mark? So, you know, I mean, it's, I think it's worked out really. Here's how it's worked out well for us, Tony. We're able to reinvest in our players. Has anybody been out to our indoor practice facility? Okay, so you've seen that, right? Mark went into a tennis bubble that was about 60 yards long on a concrete field that was covered with a green rug. you know, and we've got a field turf field that's full 100-yard field with full end zones. You can do everything but punt in there, and if you catch a pass on the sidelines at full speed, you got 15 yards to go out and hit a padded wall. You're not going to get hurt. And I thought, you know, we're building this thing, man, this is expensive. What am I doing? What are we doing? No one's going to use it. The weather's perfect in Colorado, you know, and John Fox was the coach at the time, and he loved practicing in the cold. And he started to use a little bit. Then Kubiak came, and I think it was the first Friday in September before our first game, and I looked out the window and I turned to my assistant Lisa Williams and said, "Where's practice?" She says, "I don't know." So I walked downstairs, and they're practicing indoors in September on a perfectly sunny day. And Gary felt that the environment was so much more subdued. There were no distractions, no airplanes, no cars, no sirens, no nothing. They couldn't look up at the sky and figure out what they were going to be doing that night on Friday. We use it all the time. And we have other areas we farm it out for parties, and we use it for some kids events. And this Saturday there's a great event, Memories in the Making, for Alzheimer's Association. And it's just, you know, but that's the kind of, and the players, you know, it's a perfect surface. It's not what Mark practiced on. It's a brand new field turf field that we maintain. They don't complain about it. Doesn't hurt their back, doesn't hurt their knees. And we use it all the time. But that's one example. We're upgrading the team meeting rooms. We've upgraded offices. We have a cafeteria. Mark, I don't know how you fed yourself. Did you go down to Wendy's and put food right down there at 58th and Logan? Pretty much. We now serve the players 2.5 meals a day. And if you want to take your food with you, we got 4 chefs that'll prepare something for you. And we have a full kitchen. We cook all of our food there. You know, nutrition is a huge part of it. The biggest problem the guys have is keeping the weight on, not taking it off, and so we have to feed them food all the time. The problem is that I get to eat there too, and that isn't the right diet for yours truly. But you know, we've been able to help the players out with this deal. So I really want to see it get extended. The lockout that we had was really bad. You guys don't, you know, what do you care about problems between owners and players? No offense to Mark, former player. You want us to work it out, and you want the games played on the field. Knock it off. Everybody's making a lot of money. So that's another fear. You know, you don't want that public perception. Sir?
What is your position as far as players, let's say, for example, a quarterback in San Francisco making a personal or political statement on the field? How does that affect your relationship with the players, and how the league should expect on the players?
Well, you're speaking specifically about Kaepernick, I assume, and you know, we had a player who expressed himself last year, and we took some steps to try and help him get some understanding. And in Denver, Chief Robert White, head of police chief in Denver, met with him privately, and he's done some stuff for him, and Brandon has followed through on that. But he had his beliefs, and we're not going to prohibit players from expressing themselves. A lot of fans didn't like it. I understand that. You know, there's a certain amount of respect that almost everybody, frankly, feels you should have for the national anthem or the flag, and I understand that, and I feel that way. I don't think he was disrespecting the flag as much as trying to make a statement. Could he have done it a different way? Yeah, he probably could have. But he made his choice, and we're not going to stop that. It wasn't interfering with his play on the field or how he conducted himself in our building or anything like that. And so I won't say we supported what he was doing. We tried to support him to come to a means of the end, or whatever that phrase is. You know, try and come to a result. Because if you're going to do that, what's the end result? What are you trying to accomplish? And we tried to help him get to that. And I think he was accepting of that, and so I mean, that's the kind of thing. Players want to be heard. They want to express themselves. They want to brand themselves. That's important to pro athletes now. And I've tried to be compassionate and understanding about that, because if you're not, then you're not in tune with what matters to them. You know, for you and I, it probably just matters that they come in and work their ass off every day and try and help us win, right? That's probably what's most important to you and I. But to them, there's, they have other desires, other things that are important to them. And we as an organization, we try and connect with them on that, and we've got some initiatives that we're trying to do to help players promote themselves. Because I've heard this was interesting. Brandon Marshall, do you guys remember he played for us, the other Brandon Marshall? He spoke to the owners, and he said something. He came down. Roger Goodell asked him to come speak to the owners at our annual meeting in Phoenix. And Brandon said this right in front of 32 owners. This was impressive. He did a really good job. And this is a kid that had some off-field troubles and a difficult life. And he said, you as owners, you always want us to promote your team. You want us as players to do that for you. How about you promote us as players? And I'll tell you what, I wrote that down. And I went back and I talked about it with some of the people that work with our players on a lot of their off-field activities. So I'm, through social media and through other means, I think you'll see more active work by our players, for doing their own endeavors. Not necessarily what the teams, our champions in the community, and some of you who work with some of the organizations that we work together with, but their own initiatives, what's important to them. Von Miller has his own foundation, helps kids with glasses so they can see, and does a lot of things like that. There's a bunch of other players, and they want to be recognized for that because it's meaningful to them. So, we need to do a better job of that in that area. So I've given you a long answer on that. Yeah. Right behind you. Okay. One here, and then some in the back.
Question. I'm on the board. I want you to know that the ability for us to have you sit and tell your story, just like Pete Coors, Dick Montfort, and Paul Andrews.
Talk up.
It's seriously, your messages are so valuable. I'm an New Yorker whose brother-in-law is a Yankee. This doesn't happen in New York. So all the young business people in here have to truly recognize that this is an intimate moment where you're sharing not just the things that will make us even more enthusiastic about our Broncos, but where you started. You have an amazing monitor over your head, but the story you told about where you started is what young people need.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. It's nice. Use the word intimate, and that intimacy isn't in other markets, but it is a special relationship between this team and this town. And if I had said, and I never would, I've known Brian for a while, and he asked me to do this, and I respond. I've watched what you've done as a board member. I've watched your speakers and who you've had here and what he's trying to accomplish. And so it wasn't hard just to instantly say that'll be fun and we worked on a date. But let's say I was detached from that connection that we have and I had said no. That would have gotten around. Even if I had told you, it would have. I'm telling you, that people would have said, the Broncos, they got this guy Ellis and he really isn't engaged. And he's, we tried to get him to come speak, and he gave me a half-baked answer about why he couldn't or something. I just know how intimate the relationship, and you use that word, is between our town and our team, this region and our team. So I thank you for that. But it's, it's not like I have a choice because no, I mean that sincerely. And I don't mean that flippantly, but I mean that sincerely. We've got an obligation. We have an obligation, and it's different than an obligation somewhere else. It just is, So in the back, we'll go back there for a couple. Right. It did. But I think, if you read the Denver Post editorial that they wrote on it, I think that would best describe what our feeling was. And that is, we've got 75,000 people on the wait list. And right now, a lot of those people are buying tickets on the secondary market. Maybe some of you are doing that too, at very high prices. And they'd like to have an opportunity to get season tickets. And what has happened is a lot of people are just buying those seats, but they're not going to any of the games. And we were able to track that. And some had excuses, some had reasons, legitimate reasons. Well, we had discussions with people about it, but you know, we looked into who was really using them and what they were doing with the tickets, and you know, a lot of it was ticket brokers. I'll be honest with you. There were some season ticket holders. Don't get me wrong, and there were some hurt feelings and hard feelings, and we tried to work through some situations, getting to understand their personal situations. But it was clear over a number of years what they were doing. It was for their own personal gain, and they weren't allowing others to go. And we got a lot of complaints, and we still do, about my section 104. I was surrounded by Colt fans, or I was surrounded by Charger fans, or the Patriots were, why are you selling all these tickets to the Patriots? Well, we're not doing it, you know. Now, it's a free market, and you know, you can't go to every game. It's expensive. Our tickets are expensive. Your seats are expensive. So yeah, so that's expensive. And you know, if you're going to sell a few games, that's your right. But if you're going to, over a season or 2 seasons or 3 seasons, not do it, we felt it was time to put people in there that wanted to come watch the Broncos play. And so that's why we did it. Yes?
Hi, thank you for talking about the relationship with Brian, because that is so important in today's global world. And Kyle and Brian are great guys that have been affiliated with you on the advisory board. My question is to you for the Asian community. I'm brave enough to admit to you 200 plus 300,000 Asians in the state of Colorado, but do not come to Bronco games as everyone else does. Is there any outreach or strategy you have to engage more people who are making Colorado community proud in economic development point of view, but they have to embrace this culture? And I say that I don't know much about this, but I enjoy hearing about all the games for my daughters.
Right. I mean, our business is football, and so our outreach through various chambers, you know, there's minority chambers and whatnot, is you know, it probably gets shorted because we can't reach everybody. But we're easy to find. We're easy to find, that I do know. And you know, we can put you in touch with people that can respond to your requests. Whether or not we can fulfill them, I can't answer because I don't know exactly what they would be. But you know, we're inclusive with everybody. We've got a lot of you know, a lot of stakeholders from all over the world, and a lot of stakeholders from all over the country. And we're very fortunate. Our popularity, if you look at a map of who's your favorite team, they have that. I should bring it. And there's a big swath of orange across the Middle West and the West, and it extends into Utah and Nevada and northern New Mexico and Wyoming and Montana and parts of Idaho and on over into western Kansas and western Nebraska. And then the Vikings start to come in, or the Cowboys or the Chiefs. But if you look at the map, there's this big orange blob in the middle of the country. And unfortunately, as Pat Bullen said, that's a lot of jackrabbits and tumbleweeds, you know, which is true. Not many people, but the point is we're a big brand in a big part of the country, and so we're all inclusive. Yes, in the back.
I have to ask, switching to different teams, what do you think about our Colorado Rockies right now?
Oh, I'm really impressed, you know, and everybody's talking about them, and that's when it's fun. I grew up in a baseball town. I grew up in Boston, Massachusetts, and my first job in professional sports was hawking Coca-Cola, popcorn, and peanuts at Fenway Park. At the age, you can look it up. Yeah, 16 years old. And then when I was 18, after I graduated from high school, this is not a great story, but I'll tell it. The drinking age in Massachusetts at the time was a disastrous 18 years old. And I sold beer in the stands. And I made a lot of money back then for an 18-year-old kid before he went off to college. No, the Rockies' success is fantastic, and see all these young guys, they lose their 2 best pitchers. You know, one guy to testicular cancer and the other to a foot injury, and these rookies step in. And, you know, what it does, I don't know if anybody else is sports fans like I know you are about this team, but I'm watching and I'm paying attention, you know, instead of talking. My wife's out of town, so I can say this. Instead of sort of chatting with her and watching the game, I'm actually paying attention all the time. And not paying attention to her if she wants to talk. And every game, how'd they do? Who did it? So I think the better they do, the better it is for us, the region. I think it's really, really exciting. The fellow from the Rockies, Bud Black. Yeah, well, I think look what he's done. He's injected something into the culture, and he's made decisions. He's a very enthusiastic guy, and what they're doing on the road. I mean, I'm really looking forward to this series this weekend. So, I mean, if they get through this, and then who do they have after that? Kansas City, or I can't remember who it is. But if they can get through these next before they come back home in good stead, it's going to be pretty exciting. Yes.
There's a documentary out right now on Netflix about the Arizona Cardinals, and I was noticing on that documentary that there's a big section about the draft. And during the draft, it's I was noticing in their particular war room, it was very informal, and there's just a lot of back and forth. And so I'm wondering what the Broncos war room looks like on draft night / the next day. How much is driven by analytics, how much is driven by gut feeling, how much is driven by the board, etc. So
all of the above. All of the above. And the players, the main players are John Elway, Matt Russell, his right-hand guy on personnel. Usually his chief head of college scouting is with him, and that used to be Adam Peters, and it's now a guy named Brian Stark. And then the head coach is right there. All the scouts sit in the back, but the head table is really only about 4 or 5 guys. Our chief medical advisor, former head trainer Steve Antonopoulos is usually there. He's got all the medical reports because you got to ask, what about this kid? Let's give us the medical rundown, because there are a lot of these college kids had come off of injury and stuff. We drafted one this year, Jake Butt, tight end from Michigan, blew out his ACL in the I think it was in the Rose Bowl. Isn't that where Michigan played? I can't remember. But so those are kind of your key players at the table. There's no yelling and screaming. Did you ever see the movie Draft Day? It's a great movie. There's some tense moments, I think, because the clock ticks down, and 10 minutes is not a lot of time if you're wrestling with a couple of decisions or a couple of guys you think you might want to pick, and then there's distractions. Other teams are calling you to kind of. They may not even be serious about a trade, but they'll call you just to distract you and things like that. And so I always remember one time, I don't know if it was Mike Shanahan or Ted Sundquist, our general manager. It might have even been Josh McDaniels, but Brian Zanders, I think it was our general manager, and he calls Parcells to see if he's interested in a trade. And Brian was all excited about it. And Parcells said, "That sounds good. I'll get right back to you." He never called Brian back. And he was just playing with him. I remember, and Brian said, "Yeah, he's not calling me back." But those things like that happen that are funny, and a lot of speculation. What are they going to do? What's this team going to do? But it's a fun night. I sit in the back in the corner and make sure those cameras don't catch me. Let's go back, and then we'll come up front right here.
So it's interesting hearing you reflect kind of on the start of your career. So what advice would you give to young people kind of starting their careers, and how to best position yourself?
The question was, what advice would you give to young people, and how, as they start their careers, and how they would best position themselves at the outset? I would do as much as I could. I guess how would I put this? I would ask for as much work as I could possibly take on, and if they say no, then you're probably not at the right place, because there's plenty of things they can find for you to do, depending upon what your field of interest is. I would do very little talking. I would do a ton of listening, and I would watch and observe as much as I could how people behave, because you can find leaders, and then you can find fake leaders, and you can find doers, and you can find non-doers by observing. And I can't speak for what drives you, but make sure you do something that's fun and that you enjoy, and that when you get out of bed and you get out of your car or you get off the light rail station, you feel good about going into the office. And that's kind of the environment we try to create out at UC Health Training Center. Yes, sir.
Well, back to 2 questions. First question I asked Mr. Taylor.
So you probably know that Broncos is the best dressed up team probably in the world. So my question is, like, how do we manage that? Is that specifically somehow...
We're the best dressed team? You're following us on social media when all the players get dressed up and get on that plane and they all have on these really bright colored suits? They do. That's kind of a competition. Yeah. You know, I'll be interested to see what we do. I think our players, they like getting dressed up on the way out to the game. When they come home, they've just played a game. They'd like to wear something comfortable. So I think John Elway and Vance are talking about, I don't know if you've seen a lot of the teams. You ever watch, anybody here soccer fans, Premier League? And they show up with their team sweatsuits, you know. I think for plane rides home, Mark, that's what we need. Be a little more comfortable than having to put that tie and that coat on when you're still sweating. You like it like that? Yeah. But anyway, that's more of a internal competition among the players. And then when they get off the bus, because we bus them out to DIA, they all jockey for position to get pictures taken of themselves that we will post on our social media sites. And then Vaughn will ask for a copy of the picture, and he'll put it on his site, you know, like that kind of stuff. It's fun. It's fun to see them get dressed. They have fun with it.
Yeah, and the other question I'm asking, not because I'm Russian and it's about IT and I want to tax something. No, so my question is that, I mean, we don't have an issue definitely with fans in Denver, because the first thing that I heard getting in here is that go to Denver Broncos game. But my question is that, do you use any kind of CRM system, or do you use like any IT to get people in and manage the sales and manage the fans, manage the business?
You mean some kind of a tracking system? Oh yeah. We can, you know, that barcode on your ticket, we can do a lot with that. We have, you know, affinity cards we do a lot with. We are constantly doing surveys. In combination with the National Football League, and maybe some of you have been questioned before out at a game. It's called the fan enhancement surveys, and there's a name for them. And you know, we get 300-400 people a game, and we can judge pretty clearly where we are. You as fans, your expectations of us are very high, and I get kind of concerned if we're not in the top 10, because I feel like, you know, we've got this great market, all this enthusiasm. But you're demanding of our performance on the field, and you're demanding of how we present our games and what your experience is in the stadium. And that's the way it should be. So, you know, we're usually in the top half and everything, but to say we're in the top 5 on everything, we did pretty well when Peyton Manning guided us to 3 13-plus win seasons. You know, you were pretty satisfied. So that weighed into your thinking a little bit. And last year, you know, we actually did pretty well, but I always strive to, I look at that data all the time, and it's very detailed, and we can watch. We can figure out your patterns and what you need and what you value. How we give back on that and how we correct or answer back on that, we can do better. I'll be honest with you. We still need to do better. Sure. Yes, in the back.
Just read in the article in the Denver Westward that the naming rights to Sports Authority Field, I guess the Broncos own it now.
We do.
Has there been any viable offers for the naming rights?
No offers, lots of viable and legitimate conversations, and I spent a fair amount of time back in New York working with our agency, our partner, WME IMG, and they're still pretty bullish on it. But speaking of being demanding, you know, the money that we get, or that we split it with the stadium district, and on the naming rights contract, and that money that the stadium district gets, which is a board, it's a 9-member board, and they make decisions. They're our landlord, you know, theoretically, not theoretically, literally. That money they get will go back into the building in terms of maintenance and enhancements. So to just do any deal, I don't want to do that. We've got to keep the stadium going for another 30 years and prevent you from having to pay taxes or asking you to vote on whether you would support us to build a new stadium is not only is it a challenge, but the money we're going to need to put in so we can prevent that from happening is going to be north of $600 million over 30 years. And I think I told the public last year in a media statement it was 350, and I hadn't seen the results of the comprehensive study. And I don't know, you know, there's a lot of, there might be fluff in that number, but the point is, we've got to get the right deal, the right naming rights deal with the right partner, who that we have a relationship with, that's going to stay in business and going to be a viable entity for a long, long time. So I had said publicly, I mean, I'll say this to you, I said publicly, I really hope to have it done by August, and I can tell you, I don't think that's going to happen. I'd love to have it done by this year. You know, right now we have a name of a company that's, you know, their URL goes to Dick's Sporting Goods, so Dick's likes it, but they don't exist anymore. So we need to change the brand, and we need to get that deal done. Yes. Hi. What has been one of the biggest obstacles that I overcame, and how did I do it? I didn't do it. We hired John Elway and we hired John Fox because, as I said earlier in this presentation, we were at kind of a low point as a franchise on a lot of different levels. And you know, for Pat to come to agreement on that decision and us to go forward with it, change the culture and change the community's attitude towards our team. There have been other little ones, but they're not that important in the scheme of things. That was probably the most important. Yes?
One of the things Tom Brady's always cited for is when he was drafted, Robert Kraft, that was the best decision he'd ever made. I'm wondering how many times you've heard other athletes say that. Yeah, they might not get out.
The question, I've actually never heard anybody say that. I thought that was a pretty good quote. I'm sure somebody has said that. You know, I've heard a couple of players. The question was, Tom Brady said to Robert Kraft, the owner of the Patriots, after he got drafted back in 2000, I think it was, that's the best decision your team will have ever made. Brady was a 6th round draft pick. So I'm sure Mr. Kraft was like, oh, man, nice to meet you, Tom. And little did he know, huh? Little did Mr. Kraft know, but maybe he did know. But what a run of success. And the question was, have you ever heard an athlete, other players, ever say that? And I haven't. I've heard some players walk out of our building, and I didn't hear it directly. I heard some guys tell me, you know, a player will say, hey, you know, you're on our list. We're interested in you, and we'd love for you to become a Bronco. And there have been a couple of players who've said, well, that's great, you know, and if you don't draft me, I'll come back and kick your ass in a couple of years. And that's actually happened. I'm not going to cite the players, but there's some pretty confident kids that come out of that college. And we've had, I've heard that story told. And you know, because the football people like that. They like that brazen confidence. So. Any more in the back? There's one over here, sir.
I mean, you can't talk about certain personnel, but comment of the last quarterback shuffling going into the season, and secondly, you can comment business-wise on the globalization of the NFL and whether we start seeing countries other than the UK.
Right. Okay. 2 questions there. The first one I'll answer, and then I'll answer the second one. Will there be any more moves or shifts in the quarterback competition, or are we going to bring anybody else in, I think is your question. I don't know that we won't. I would guess that we wouldn't. I would guess that the coaches are comfortable with the 2 guys vying to be the starting quarterback, and the 7th round pick has got some real upside and talent, Chad Kelly, and I think they want to see what he has. But I'm probably wrong in saying that's definitive. You never know. We'll see. You know, Kelly hasn't really done anything yet because he's just got his hand out of a cast and he's coming off some ACL. And if he's not able to perform, then I think John Elway would look at maybe bringing someone else in, Vance, and he might agree to do that. The second question was the comment on the globalization of the National Football League and where the game is growing or where it could grow, not just in the UK but other markets. Isn't that right? That's what you said. And the interest in the game has grown a lot since I was at the league office kind of working on some of that. I used to run what they used to call American Bowl games in Tokyo, which were preseason games. Broncos played in a couple of them. And I ran those for the NFL, for Roger Goodell at the time. And the interest in, especially on television, the contracts that the league had with foreign broadcasters, there really wasn't much. And we actually, as clubs, were subsidizing the league in its international endeavors, including trying to subsidize a players' league called the World League of American Football, which switched over to a name called NFL Europe. And that has gone 180 degrees. The international business and the television rights and the marketing rights and the branding and some of the sales of jerseys and trinkets and all that has got it to the point where it's self-sustaining and profitable. There are other markets that I think are very interested. Mexico, you'll see obviously another game, and there's a lot of affinity between the country and various teams. I'd like to think we could play a game there. I'd love to go back and play a game in London. It was a great experience despite what happened. It was a bad game, but it's a really fun experience to get your team, pull them away. It's kind of like a second training camp, Mark, where you get your guys away and they kind of build some camaraderie, and you're over there for a week. But having said that, in terms of growth, London and I think England, the UK is kind of the key target right now. Mexico could be up there. I can't speak to the Far East. You know, there's an effort to play some games over there. I don't know when that's going to transpire. I'm not sure if the Patriots are playing in China anytime soon. I thought I read that or heard that. I should know that. I'm sorry, I don't. But the first progression of expansion is still the UK, then Mexico. Other markets are burgeoning and could handle it. Germany could. Germany's a football market, but. We'll never overcome the real football, as they say. I don't think that's the world's passion. Yes, sir.
Quick question. A lot of people are familiar with what Pat Bowlen has done for the Broncos, but are unfamiliar with all the things that he did for example, the television rights for the NFL. So what are the footprints to get Pat Bowlen into the Hall of Fame?
Well, it was close last year. This year, he was. The question, if anybody didn't hear, is how is Pat? You know, what does Pat Bowlen need to do? What are the footprints to get him into the Hall of Fame? He was one of 4 or 5 finalists for a contributor spot, which went to Jerry Jones, and I don't know. I'm sorry, I've forgotten who the other person was. If I think of it, I'll remember. I'll say it. But and this year, there's only one of those spots available, and we think he's got a good chance. I mean. You pointed out all of the work he did on the NFL broadcasting. He was a big proponent of international play, always volunteered to play in those games. A big proponent on the board of the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Was a key guy in labor negotiations. He was a kitchen cabinet member for Paul Tagliabue and Roger Goodell up until the time he got sick. A trusted advisor to both. And his work on the television committee was really forward-thinking. But, you know, a bigger thing to me is just the level of excellence and expectations that he set here. And for us to try and maintain that is, it's a tall order. You know, I mentioned at the outset of this that Pat was in the office every day, and he's not there anymore. He doesn't come in. He's resting comfortably, battling a horrific disease. And we're doing everything to follow what he set out to do, what, you know, the blueprint, as I said, that he developed. But there's a real vacancy there. There really is. And hopefully one day one of his children will come along and fill those very big shoes, you know, because it's not an easy thing to do. But there's just a vacancy, and he was so excellent at it when he was able to come in and do it. And, you know, his track record of success as owner of this team, what's happened to this team, what's happened in this town, his role in that, add it all up, he should be in the Hall of Fame, no question about it. India. Ready to go, okay. Good to know. Kyle, it looks like it. I thank everybody for tonight. I appreciate your time.
Joe, let's give him a round of applause.